Thanks so much for joining us today. We will be going over the talking points for school partners, teachers, accounts. And just as a preview, today we will be going through the basics on how to get started with your teacher account as one of our school partner teachers. So if you have not used talking points yet, this is a great way to get started. I'll also be going over some tips and tricks on ways that you can best make use of the program as well. So fret not if you've already been using it. Hopefully you'll learn something new, but if you don't want to stay for the entire webinar, feel free to hop out. And again, we will be sending a pre-recorded version of this as well. Wow, Buffalo, Syracuse, Indianapolis, Franklin, DeKalb. Awesome. We got people from all over. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen so that we can start. Great. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, to reiterate for anyone that missed the first couple of minutes, my name is Alma, and I am the Partnerships Development Associate at Talking Points. I have my lovely colleagues Paige and Brianna here as well, who will be able to help answer any questions that you may have. And please put those questions into the Q&A bucket. The chat, if you have any comments, if you want to make me aware of anything or say thank you or, send your introduction, or any tips and tricks for teachers, that would also be super great to put in the chat. And today we're going to be going over our accounts for school partner teachers. So all of you have had access to Talking Points thanks to your schools and or districts. So the beauty of the school partner account for teachers is that you don't have to worry about going out and adding your phone numbers and making sure that you have access to all of those school and district phone numbers, especially during this remote learning period. We are really thankful to be able to provide these lines of communication for all of you. I am going to go ahead and get started. So for anyone that is here today, as I mentioned, you will already have access to Talking Points and have an account created for you on behalf of your school and or district. So you will not have to go through the sign up process. So you should not be coming here to sign up. You should instead be coming to sign in. And sign in, there are a few different options for how you can do that. If your school or district is sending us information through Clever and you use Clever on a regular basis, you'll be able to sign into Talking Points directly from your Clever dashboard. So you can actually go into your Clever account and click the Talking Points icon that will look a little something like these two speech bubbles in the top corner, and that will automatically log you into your Talking Points account. If you are not using Clever sign in, fret not. There are two other options for you. The first is if your school or district email is tied to a Google account, you can click this sign in with Google button, and that'll automatically sign you in with Google. That way you don't have to remember a username or password for Talking Points separately. And the third is if neither of those two options apply to you, you should have received an invitation email from your school or district administration. So it would have come to your inbox and will look a little something like this. It'll say your school administrator's name invites you to join class or school, in this case, name on Talking Points. And you'll be able to click this join button, and that will walk you through the sign up process so that you can get started creating your Talking Points account. If you have not yet received this email from your school administration and you think you should have, please reach out to them and have them send those to you. They should have the instructions on how to do that. And without further ado, we're going to log in. So I have already set up my account, and I am using mine with an email and a password. So I can just go ahead and sign in, and I will automatically be brought to my Talking Points account. So as a teacher in one of our school and district partners, you will automatically have all of your classes and rosters added in for you. Again, that's the beauty of the account, is that you don't have to worry about doing any of that yourself. That's all going to come in directly from your SIS and or from a spreadsheet that your school and district administration have shared with us. Obviously, we'll not yet have any messages since that is, the first step in getting started. But you won't have to jump through any hoops of adding phone numbers or making sure that you gather that information. As soon as you log into Talking Points, you can start sending a message and you're good to go. So the first things that you're going to see in your account will be three different sections. The first on the right here is your class feed. These are messages that have been sent out as blasts to one or more entire classes. If you want to filter it and just see messages that are sent to particular classes, you can click on that drop down that I just demonstrated and view only the announcements that were sent to particular classes or periods. Or again, you can view all of the messages that have gone out to all of your classes. In addition, you can click on these three dots here and either send that to a different class if you didn't originally include a class in it, but then you realize that you wanted to. You can resend the same message to a different class. You can forward it as a message to a particular family. So we have had cases where, a new family has come in to the system a few days after you sent this original message, but you want to make sure that they get the same information. So you can click on this forward as a message option, and that will go over to them directly. You can also save this message as a template. If you have sent something that you know you're going to want to send again frequently, you can save that as a template in your account that we can quickly access it. And in a second, I'll also show you how you can do that additionally and make sure that you have your own templates that you're creating. Or you can delete the message. And please be aware that this delete is kind of a false delete. You can delete it from your account and it will no longer appear here in your class feed. But deleting this message does not mean, and I'm hoping that everyone is listening to this, if you delete this, it does not mean that it will be deleted from families' phones. If they have already received the message, we have no way of controlling that and deleting it from their inbox. So if you delete that message, it'll just primarily be a superficial thing on your end that you will no longer be able to see. In this middle section here, you're going to have your individual messages that will show you message threads that have gone back and forth between individual families. In each message thread, there are a few things that you can see, which I will go over later once we go over composing a message. But this is where you'll be able to either search for or locate threads with individual family members. And last but not least, composing a message. So once you're in your account, you have access to all of your classes and students, you can go ahead and write a message. You'll click this compose button up in the top left. And the first step in composing a message is, of course, selecting your recipients. You have a few different options to select your recipients, and you can either select everyone, all of the students, all of the families in your class rosters, particular class periods, so if you just wanted to send that to your periods 2 and 3, or if you just wanted to send that to individual families, so you just wanted it to go to a few students' parents. You could select any number of those as you'd like. In addition, you can actually type there and that'll fill in some options for you. Again, keeping in mind that this everyone and these individual class periods, if they're sent as such, will be considered announcements and those will go into your class feed. Once you've decided who your message is going to, the next step is to write the message. If you are just getting started with Talking Points and have not sent any messages to your families, we do suggest sending this intro message that we've automatically created for you. It'll say, "Hi, I'm teacher signature," and these brackets will automatically fill in the teacher signature that you set with your account. And in a second, I will also go over where you can find that teacher signature and or change it if you don't remember what you had originally set it to. I will be sending you messages about my class. You can always reply to this message to reach me. I would love to hear from you. And a great point here is that sometimes families don't understand that they can and should in fact respond to your messages because some other systems aren't two-way communication like Talking Points. They may not be aware of the fact that they are encouraged to respond to you and that they can do so in their home language. Please reply to tell me something about your child. To unsubscribe, reply goodbye. Use the free app to see more. Couple other great points here. Because Talking Points is completely an opt-out model, that means that families don't have to download anything to get started. So this app is completely free, but completely optional and just a suggestion. If they don't download it, families are going to continue receiving messages through basic SMS text, and they won't have to download anything. But because they're automatically enrolled in the program, they do have the option to unsubscribe if they for any reason decide that they no longer want to receive messages. And I will show you how to identify in our system whether or not they have unsubscribed. If you're okay with this message, you can go ahead and send it. If you want to make any changes, like you may not want to tell them about the app just yet, but you do want to tell them that they can reply in their home language, you can absolutely do that as well. And that is a great note for me to follow up on, because the beauty of talking points is that no matter who you send it to, whether it be 45 families or one family, every single one of those messages is going to arrive to them in their home language. So when you're composing, you're not having to worry about making different messages for different language groups or going into Google Translate to copy and paste things. We do all of the translation for you once the message has been sent. And we translate into over 100 languages. And again, all of that translation is two-way. So encourage your families to reply in their home language. And because of that, we have had some cases where families will come back to teachers and say, wow, I'm so impressed. I didn't know that you spoke Spanish. And the teachers then have to come back and say, oh, I don't. It's, this system is translating for me. So that's really the beauty of talking points, is you can communicate with all of your families at once without having to worry about whether they're an English speaker or whether they speak Spanish or whether they speak Swahili. All that translation happens for you. And once you've made any changes to the message, or if you just want to type in your own complete message, you can always save that as a template. That way you can have it for quick access later. So to save your messages as a template, you can click this Save as a Template button, and that will automatically come into here, into your saved messages. That way the next time around, you can click on it and quickly send it out. To your messages, you can also add fun colored backgrounds that families can view if they download the application on their phones. You can also add PDFs, images or videos, Google Drive files, emojis, or polls. The polls have been super helpful in these past few remote learning weeks. We have seen families and teachers using this to communicate about things like Wi-Fi. So we've seen teachers ask, does your family have access to internet or a computer at home? And you can set the options as yes, as no, or as sometimes, or whatever you choose. And when families receive that on their end, they will be prompted to text 1 for yes, text 2 for no, text 3 for sometimes, etc. Once you start getting those responses, you'll be able to view not only how many people responded, but exactly who responded with which option, which has been super helpful for technology distribution to make sure that you know which families to follow up on with certain things. Now that you have completed your message, actually one last thing that I wanted to point out before we go ahead and send that is this number here. So Talking Points does have a character limit of 320 characters. This is purely because of cell phone restrictions, again, since the majority of our families are receiving messages by basic SMS text. We do have to slightly shorten the length of messages in order to avoid messages being sent in a wrong, strange order or being broken up into unintelligible chunks by the cell carriers. There is, however, no limit to the number total messages that you can send. So if you for any reason have to send anything way longer than 320 characters, we do encourage you to break that up into smaller chunks that are ended at a complete sentence, and you can send those all out one right after the other to ensure that families get the message. Great, so we've covered all of that. Now we can send our message. And there are two options for sending. The first is to just go ahead and send that out immediately, and that'll start arriving to families ASAP. And the second is to pre-schedule messages to go out at a future date or time. So if you are doing lesson planning on a weekend and you want to plan out all of the messages and communication that you're going to send to families throughout the week, Or if it's 4 a.m. and you know that no one else is going to be awake and you don't want to make their phones buzz, you can schedule that out to go out later in the day by clicking on this schedule button. Then you can pick the date. I think I want to send this out later today at around 4 p.m. Maybe that'll be a good time to reach families. They're probably starting to wrap up with their days if they are working. And you can go ahead and click schedule. That message is going to go ahead and be scheduled. And to view it, you can click on this scheduled tab up here. So when you're in your scheduled options, you do have a few different options for this particular message. So you can see who it's going to, what it says, and when it's scheduled to send. You have a few options. You can either choose to send it now if you realize, actually, I want to get this information out sooner rather than later, and I'm just going to go ahead and send it. You can either edit the message so that you can change who it's going to, the date, time, or the body if you need to make any changes, or you can cancel it. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have already sent out a message, deleting it will not retrieve it from families. So we do suggest that sometimes scheduling messages is a great way to ensure that it's going to the right people, that it contains the right information before you actually send it, whether it be scheduling it for an hour in the future to make sure that you have time to proofread. I know that there's so many things happening right now that there have been definitely more than one email that I have sent without the attachments that I promised or with some pieces of information missing. So scheduling is a great way for your own sanity check to make sure that the messages are going out exactly as you intended them. And if it's scheduled and you realize that there are actually some changes that you want to make or you don't actually want to send it, you can cancel it before it's even gone out. Then, once you have started sending those messages, as I mentioned, these individual message threads will be representative of all of the messages that have gone back and forth between a particular family. So you can scroll up and see all of the history of communication that has happened between Jose's family and yourself. On each of these messages, you'll notice that there are a couple of different colors. These gray colors are the announcements that you've sent to the family, and below it will also indicate who the message has gone to. This green check mark for announcements will indicate that the message has been sent. Because it goes to so many recipients, we don't have the ability to have read receipts for it. The blue messages are the individual messages that you've sent just to this family, and it'll show you who it went to, whether it's the guardian or the mother, the father, the sibling, however you have it saved in the account. And this gray check mark indicates that the message has been sent. If the family is using the Talking Points for Parents app, which you can identify by this parent app badge up here, this message the checkmark can turn green if and when they have read it. Again, we only have read receipts for families that are receiving messages through the parent app. Unfortunately, because of cell carrier restrictions, we don't have that information for families getting the messages by text. So if you want to be able to know if they've read the message or not, you should definitely encourage them to download the app. And next to each message, both the messages from the families and the messages from you, you can view the translations and the original messages that were sent by clicking this little button here, and you can see the message in Spanish, in this case for Jose's family, that was sent out to them. Or if you wanted to view the message that they sent to you, you can click on the translation button and again view the message that they originally typed in their home language before it was translated for you. And last, you'll notice this green smiley face underneath the message. If you ever have any questions on the translation for certain messages, you can click on this Help Me Understand button here, and you can send the translation to be reviewed by one of our human translators. This message was written in English, even though the family sent it in Bengali. But if you ever wanted to review any of those messages, you could press that button to the side here and have it sent to one of our human translators. That way they can take a second look at it. That's super helpful if you don't know necessarily what the family is trying to say, and maybe the translation got a little bit messed up because they were using abbreviations or slang terms. Definitely, that's a great resource that you can make sure that both you and the family are understanding each other completely. And once that message has been reviewed by one of our humans, the smiley face will turn green, and you'll know that this translation that you see here is the best one possible. In each of these message threads, you also have the ability to add the same things to your messages: PDFs, images, typing your message, emojis, and scheduling it. And you see this skip translation option here. I will make sure to cover that later and what that means. And in these individual message threads, you can also click on these three dots and either print a conversation if you want a downloadable PDF record of your conversation with this family, or you can click on View Profile. And this is one of two ways to get to your family's students' profiles. In the profile, you'll be able to see the student's name, the classes that they're a part of, their contact's name if they have that set, their relationship to the student, and their language. Many of you may not see these edit buttons here, and unfortunately that is not a mistake. If your school is syncing with us through Clever and pulling information in from your SIS, you will not have the ability to edit that information because it is coming in directly from the student information system and has not and will be overwritten every time that your family, is nightly synced with the SIS. I do see quickly that there is a hand raised. Was that an error maybe? Might have been. Okay, no worries. Yeah, so great point there is that if your school is syncing directly with our SIS, you will not have the ability to edit this. If you need to make any changes to phone numbers, if phone numbers change or languages change, you should definitely reach out to your school and or district administration to make that change in Talking Points for you. The other way that you can get to your students' profiles is by clicking on your classes. So if you click on your classes, you'll be able to see the entire class list of families that are added into your account. It'll all be organized by the student's name, even though you are communicating with their family members. And it'll indicate again how families are receiving messages, whether it's through SMS, the parent app, and which relatives they have added into the account. In this case, it's a grandfather and a relative. And you'll also have the option here to message them. Or if you click on the name, you'll be able to go into their profiles as well and view the same information. If you have any families who have unsubscribed from receiving messages from you, at the top here, there will appear a bar that says, Andrew Ng's family has unsubscribed from your class. And you'll know that that family is no longer present in the class because they have unsubscribed. And in addition, if you have any badges here where instead of parent app or SMS, it turns red and says invalid, that will indicate to you that the family's phone number that is being pulled in from the system is either disconnected or is a landline. And because we are primarily a text-based system, we will not be able to communicate with any landlines. So that is great incentive for you to follow up with your school and district administration and encourage them to get an updated phone number for that family into the system. That is also a really great incentive is we've seen great success that when families start receiving messages with talking points, if 2 months down the line their phone number changes, they're super eager to come to you as the teacher and tell you, hey, my phone number changed, can you update it in the system so that I can continue to receive messages from Talking Points? So that is a great way to ensure that those lines of communication always stay open and that you're able to communicate with them. And last, on the class end, if you wanted to create any subgroupings of students that you already have in your account, you could create a class there, name it whatever you'd like homework, study group, or reading group A. You can create the class. Class already exists. Okay, I already have a class named Reading Group A. And once that class has been created, you can add contacts by copying and pasting directly from any of your other class periods to add them into that class so that you can have different groupings and different combinations of students that you may want to communicate with separately. Thanks so much for Paige and Brianna for helping to answer questions. If you continue to have any questions, please do send them into the Q&A and we'll make sure to get to them. I think everything has been hopefully answered already. And the last couple of things that I wanted to go to in the Talking Points account, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but we do also have a mobile teacher account, which functions the same way, and they will be both tied to the same information. And so I'll definitely make sure to go through that information on the mobile account next. That'll be the second portion of this webinar. But we first wanted to go through the website application since we think that it's a little bit easier to get started with a big screen where you can view everything all at once. And once you're comfortable, you can transition to your phone. As a member of our school partner accounts, you also have access to your own reports. In your reporting, you'll be able to see the number of messages that you've sent, individual messages and announcements to families for the entire school year or for different date ranges. You can also view that as a weekly summary, monthly summary, etc. And all of these reports are completely downloadable so that you can download the images or the Excel spreadsheets to ensure that you are keeping up with your family engagement goals and really reaching out to those families, making sure that they have the communication and the resources that they need. Especially during this remote learning period, we've seen teachers communicate about things like technology and meal pickups and logins for their online courses system, all really crucial information that likely would not have been able to get to families otherwise. See, a couple questions have come in. If I have already set up an account prior to my school adopting the use of Talking Points, does anything change for me? Great question, and it depends on what type of implementation your school or district is going to do. If they choose to go the route of Clever or ClassLink and pull directly from your student information system, nothing will change. Your accounts will get merged and you will hopefully have access to even more students than you didn't have before. If I send a message in Spanish to a Spanish-speaking family, will they receive it in Spanish or will Talking Points translate back to English automatically? Great question, and that brings me to my last few points that I promised that I would touch on. So the last things that you can do in your Talking Points account is view your profile. So by clicking on Profile here, you'll be able to view your teacher signature that I mentioned at the beginning. So if you wanted it to say Mr. Newton with each message, you could save that, and every message will say Mr. Newton automatically. And to your question about Spanish to Spanish, that brings me to the skip translation option. In each of your teacher accounts, you can set a 1 second language. In this case, Mr. Newton is bilingual with Spanish, which is why for families who speak Spanish, like Jose, you can click this skip translation. And that means that every time that you send a message to this family, you can type it in Spanish and that will automatically go out in Spanish. And when the family responds, their message will be sent in Spanish as well instead of translating that back into English. If you do still want to have that translated into English, you can always keep in mind that you can see that original message here. But if you want to bypass the translation system altogether, make sure to click this skip translation option. And again, that will only appear for families that have the same language set in their accounts as you do for yours. So if Jose had 2 contact members that were being pulled in and one was not listed as speaking Spanish, that option would only appear when you select one of the family members to message. Back in your profile, you can also view your email address, change your password if necessary, and change your notification systems. So Talking Points will automatically default to sending you an email notification for every incoming message that you receive. If you think that that is maybe too much and you don't want to receive an email notification every time, you can click on a twice daily summary, weekly, or never. But we do recommend getting as many notifications as possible to ensure that you're reaching out to families. You can also choose to receive those notifications by text message. And that brings me to a last very important note is that all messages to families from Talking Points will come from a phone number that we pay for through our cell carriers. So you will never have to worry about sending them your personal phone number or having that personal phone number compromised. If you decide to enter your phone number here, that will only be used for your personal notifications. Families on their end will still receive messages from another phone number that is not your own. And the last thing to keep in mind for notification settings is that if you keep Talking Points open at all times of day in a tab on your computer, which we absolutely love to hear, you will not receive these email notifications or text notifications because our system is assuming that you're seeing the messages as they come in directly. And then the last portion here is to add your office hours. So we do have a new function for your available or office hours, where you can select the hours of the day that you want to be able to receive messages. For some reason, this Mr. Newton wants to receive messages from 1 a.m. to 11 a.m. I don't think that was right. I think that might have been a mistake. I think Mr. Newton wants to receive messages from 8 a.m. to, actually, your teachers, you wake up early, probably from 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. to about 7 p.m. And any messages that come in outside of that time frame will not give you a notification. And families will know that those will be your office hours. And after that period is over, so at 6:01 a.m. the next day, you're going to receive a summary of messages that say you received X number of messages while you were gone. Go check them out. Last, you can view your school settings and set your role and the grades that you teach or your subject. Those are all completely optional. And if you have been using Talking Points for more than one school year with your school account, you'll be able to access your past year's messages separately. So instead of viewing this year's actual messages, if you needed to, for any reason, review the communication that happened last year, you could click on that school year and it would indicate to you that you're viewing messages from school year 18-19 instead. Important note here is that in those messages, you will not be able to actively respond to anyone since all of those contacts have been archived, but that is a big oversight component to make sure that you have access to all the communication from your past years. And that is generally it on the Talking Points for Teachers website account. I see a question from Saran in the chat. If I would like to make Talking Points a primary mode of communication without composing a message first, how would I notify families to contact me? That's a great question, and unfortunately, unless families have downloaded the application, they will not know or be able to contact you first, since the phone numbers that messages come from to them will be generated once you start sending messages. So in order to be able to have that communication first, you do need to send out your first message. But once that first message has been sent out, families will always be able to contact you after that. So they don't have to worry about you initiating the conversation every single time, just that very first time. And once they have the phone number that they know that they can text you at, they can text you the next day and say, hi, or ask you how you're doing, or send you a lovely message for Teacher Appreciation Week. But you do have to initiate that very first conversation to all of them to ensure that they have the number to contact you at. My account does not have the school year link. I used it in previous years. Great question, Ms. Gosard. So you will only have this school year button if you have used it in previous years with your school. So if you in the past had an account just by yourself, but now your school is transitioning over to the school account, that will not appear until next year once you have communication with your school. Because you're using it previously, we have not archived any of your messages yet, and that will happen in August of this year. So you won't have access to that button until the next school year starts if your school has just started using it in the past month or so. Let me make sure. What are the other types of Talking Points accounts for individuals in a school? Great question, Melissa, and basically it's just semantics. So the only two types of accounts for Talking Points in a school are the teacher account, which you're reviewing here now, and the school administrator account. School administrator account is something that would be set as a permission from your school level. And we do have webinars for those as well that are run by my colleague Nancy. If you believe that you should have access to a school administrator account instead of a teacher account, that's something that you'll need to discuss with your school and or district administration. Alrighty, well, I think that is it for the questions that I see so far. I am going to now transition over into the mobile account, which again will function basically the same way. I just want to make sure that we all know how to use that account as well. Please continue sending messages into the Q&A bucket so that Paige can answer them. A couple of questions that I see here, Melissa, about the difference between the admin account. The admins would be able to communicate with an entire school at once. So you'd be able to communicate messages not only to your individual classes, but to the entire student population in a school. But again, that is a permission that will need to be decided or set by your school or district administration. I also see a question about working with a co-teacher. So great question. If you work with a co-teacher, you absolutely will be able to share a class with them, but that is also something that will need to be set up from your school's permissions. If your information is coming in directly from your SIS, you will need to make sure that that is coming in as such from the system so that you and your co-teacher can both have access to the correct class information. And now this is the Talking Points for Teachers account. Again, this is the same account essentially as you'll be using if you choose to use it on the computer. They are not mutually exclusive by any means. If you want to use the computer version when you are during the day and the phone version on weekends, completely up to you. Most of our successful teachers actually use both and have both options available to them. Some feel more confident on a computer, some feel more confident on a phone. Totally up to you. The only thing that you should make sure of is that you are signing in using the same email and password and or login method. So that's an important note, is that if you are using Clever Login on your computer, unfortunately, we do not have a Clever Login option on a mobile phone. So you will need to set a password in your computer profile where I showed your password settings in your profile before you can log in on your phone. If you are using Google to log in on your computer, you should use the same option to sign in on your phone. And last, if you are using email and password with that nice invitation email that I sent you to log in on your computer, you should click Already on Talking Points, Sign In. Again, you should not be signing up, you should be signing in. You can then go ahead and type in your password. And your email. And you'll be in. And as soon as you're into the account, you'll see all of the same information that you would have seen otherwise on your website account. This main home screen will show your classes, your messages announcements. You'll also be able to compose a message to your classes by clicking on the compose here, send your classes a message. And you'll be able to select your recipients the same way. You'll be able to select a time if you want to schedule the message. And then, of course, you can compose your message. If you click on this little light bulb icon that's kind of small in the bottom corner of the right screen, that will show you the message templates that you can access. And you can also add pictures from your camera or your gallery. And you can add poll options as well. So if you wanted to use the same polling function that is available on the website application, you can add poll options here. And you have the same option for the colored backgrounds if families are using the app, and or emojis if you wanted to add them from your keyboard as well. Once the message is scheduled, that will show up here in this little calendar icon in the top left. Currently, we don't have any messages scheduled, so it's just going to show you your general getting started options. And then once you have sent messages, you will be able to go into your messages screen as well. You'll see all the messages that have come back and forth and be able to click on individual message threads. In these message threads, you can view the same type of information as the web application. You can click on Show Translation to see the translation that was sent to families in their account. And for their messages, you can show the original message as well as requesting clarification for the Help Me Understand if you are not sure what the family really meant with their message that they sent or if there are any typos for any reason. You can also, in these message threads, compose your own message, add documents, PDF files, images, videos, schedule it, add from your message templates, and go ahead and send. From these top 3 dots as well, you'll be able to view the student's profile. Again, the classes that they're part of, their contact's name, relationship, and language. And be able to, if you are not a Clever school, make any edits to those phone numbers as well. To compose a message to an individual family, you can also use this compose icon up in the top right here, and type in any of the names of families that you want to compose messages to. And the same works, you write your message, you add attachments, etc., and send your message. Most of you will also have a classes list that shows up here as well, where you can view all of the classes in your account. For some reason, it's not showing up in this teacher's account on his phone, but in your classes list, you'll be able to view all of your class rosters, how the families are receiving messages from you, and all their student profiles. Ooh, great question, Saran. Is there a way I can compose a message in Talking Points and have it translate into another language without selecting a student? Unfortunately, no, the translation only happens after the message has been sent out. So that currently is not something that you would be able to do without sending that to an actual student. Something that you may be able to do if your school is not using Clever is actually add yourself as a test student and compose a message and send it to yourself that way, so that you would be receiving the message instead of any families. But again, that is only an option that is available if your school is not using Clever or ClassLink, since with those 2 options, you won't have the ability to add any additional students. But otherwise, we do recommend, we do recommend just going ahead and sending out that first message. That's the best way to hit the ground running and get started. And the last things in this account would be your profile. In this profile screen, you'd be able to click on your name and add a profile picture if you so desire. That will be viewable to families who are using the parent application. You can add your name, you view your email, your language settings. You can view your school settings here as well as changing your password and your notification options, as well as the office hours. And last, which I forgot to demonstrate in the web application as well, so that is my fault, but in the web application, if you see a little question mark button, just like you do here in the mobile, you'll be able to either go to our Help Center, which has dozens of articles for different topics, like what is Talking Points, if you want to know the basics, information about our privacy information, getting started, how to view translation, all of these great resources that have been curated by our team. And special shout out to my lovely colleague Paige, who has spent a lot of time making sure that these articles are all up to date and the most usable and easily understandable. Or if you in that help center are still not finding the answer to the question that you had, you can click on support here and open a chat with our team members that will allow you. Seems like our intercom system is taking a sec to load, but you'll be able to compose a message to our support team and ensure that you get the help that you need. We are running slightly behind in responding to teachers' questions because we've had such an amazing surge of people signing up for the Talking Point system to communicate with their families. But if you send us a message, we promise that we'll try to get to it as soon as possible. In addition, as a member of our school and district partners, you do receive priority customer support. So if you could, in your message, indicate, that you're having an issue and that you need help with it, we will absolutely get to it as soon as we can. And that is it for Talking Points. We've showed you the web application, the mobile application, how to send messages, and all the amazing things that you can do on both. I guess now we still have a fair amount of time left, so I wanted to take this time to do an additional live Q&A session. For any questions or any tips and tricks, actually, would be awesome that any of you have. We know that all of you are taking this extra time in your days to communicate with your families and to make sure that they're receiving all of the communication from you that they would have otherwise missed out upon if they were not receiving messages through text. So if you have any questions about Talking Points or any questions for any of the other teachers that are on this webinar today, if you have an issue and you're like, hey, I haven't been able to reach this particular family, I wanted to see if there was anything else successful that my families, that other teachers have tried with their families, now's the time. So if you have any tips and tricks, we know that at Talking Points, we really hope to foster a teacher and educator community through our schools and districts. So now is really the time to be a part of that community and to share your tips and tricks with other fellow teachers who may be going through similar things. So if you have a chat or a question or a tip, you can either raise your hand and I can unmute you so that you can talk out to everyone, or feel free to send it into the chat as well. See a couple of questions. One from Janet, could not log in. How do I get my password reset? Great question. So I will pull back my screen up so that I can show you how to do that. So on the login screen, when you're at app.talkingpts.org, there will be an option here to click on Forgot Password. If you have forgotten your password, you'll be able to get a link sent to your email and reset it that way. And Annette asks, special education teacher, recommendations on setting this up if I don't have a gen ed classroom. That is a great question, Annette, and there are a few things that can be done for you. If you reach out to your school and district administration, they will have the option to add classes for you in their account. So if you don't have a particular class that you work with, they'll be able to add you to particular grade levels if you work with particular grade level students, or they'll be able to create a special class that's named Annette's class and assign the students that you regularly work with into that class for you so that you can make sure that you are communicating with all of your students. Any other tips, tricks, questions, confusions? Janet, as a clarification, I see that Paige already responded to one of your questions. Are you a school that is using Clever for your setup? Or I guess just a question, what school or district are you reaching out to us from, Janet? OUSD. Great. Well, OUSD, since you actually have a Google account tied to your email, you should be able to click this sign in with Google option and select your email from the list that pops up in order to sign in. So you don't actually have to remember an email or password. You should be able to just sign in that way. Great. Thanks so much, Annette. We're glad that you are going to reach out to your administration about this. And we really are appreciative that you took the time to join us today and take the initiative actually to learn how to communicate with all of your families using talking points. And in the meantime, since I don't see any other questions coming in, I wanted to take this time to thank any of the other teachers who are still here. I know that some people probably had to run because it is a crazy busy time, but I wanted to thank all of you again for taking the time to join us today. We know that the educational atmosphere right now is so incredibly bonkers and that you're probably so busy, but we really wanted to make sure that you, especially on this Teacher Appreciation Week, know how valued you are in this country. As an educator, you are on the front lines and you are the one who's really making sure that your students and families are successful, especially right now. So thank you again for taking the initiative to make sure that your families are able to communicate and be active parts in their children's communication. So thank you all for joining today. I will stick around for any other last questions or comments that anyone wants to share, but otherwise, we hope you have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much on behalf of all the Talking Points team for being teachers and for being so absolutely incredible. Thanks, everyone.